Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Everyday Landscapes. It really doesn't get any more everyday than this, to be honest, because I'm right on the edge of a road here, just looking across at a farmer's field, shooting some trees in the distance. So I'm actually currently just between two places here. Behind me there is the village of Greenfield, and over that way is the town of Flitwick, and I'm sort of on the border of both really. And like I said, I'm right on the edge of this road here, and I'm shooting across a farmer's field, at a row of trees, which is kind of the back end of Flitwick Moor. And now I drive past here quite a lot. I drive past here probably once or twice, well, at least twice a week. And it's around this time as well, which is sort of mid to late afternoon. It's about 2:30 at the moment, and the sun goes down at this time of year at around about sort of 4:15. So we've got some quite nice late light really on this scene. And the sun's coming from over in that direction. And at this time of day, like I said, it shines, gives a beautiful, casts some beautiful light on these trees. And because we're in very late autumn, we're actually in early winter, there's still some really nice colour. So that's what I'm going to try and get here. So essentially what we've got here is just, like I said, this row of trees with some really nice colour, but there's some birches that are sort of sporadically dotted amongst the trees, and that's what I've picked out for this particular composition. And now what I'll do is I'll go in camera and just show you exactly what I'm taking. So if you look in camera here, you can see that we've got this birch tree that's sort of predominant in the image, or it's actually a number of birch trees, but it's in a little clearing between the other trees. I'm not quite sure what they are. I don't know whether they're oaks or whatever, but they've got beautiful, beautiful sort of rusty colours at the moment. And this oak tree, these birch trees are just sort of sat in a little clearing where it's a little bit darker, and the direction of the sun is giving some beautiful light onto the actual bark of the tree. So you're getting a really nice sort of bright white, sort of very skeletal sort of feel around these, with these lovely sort of rusty colours around it. Now I'm shooting at about 180 millimeters here. I'm going to totally eliminate the sky in the shot. There won't be any sky in the shot, and I'm probably going to just have these birches on the right hand third. This is the composition I've got at the moment. That may change. I'm considering doing a pano because there's so much along this little row here that I could pick from, that I might actually shoot a panorama and then choose my composition later. So I've actually had a look at this and I've decided to tweak the composition a little bit. So if we go in camera, I'll try and explain what I've done. So if you look here, I'm now at 150 millimeters instead of 180. I've come out quite a bit. And basically the reason I've done this is because I really like the tree that's on the far left hand side. It's sort of a very big, sort of very, like I say, rusty brown oak, I'm assuming. There's a little bit of interest underneath it. There's a little bit of darkness, which kind of gives a little bit of separation. But I really still want to keep those birches on the right hand side. So the sky on this will be totally cropped out, and the ground will be cropped out as well, up until the point where you can only see the trunk, the start of the trunk of the tree, of the trees. And yeah, I just think that's a better fit for what I'm trying to do here. It'll be a letterbox style of image, as is my sort of way with woodland. But what I'm really focusing on is that, like I said, that sort of real skeletal features of those birch trees, and then the real lovely rusty sort of brown colours of those, brown and sort of dark green colours of those oaks, I think that they are as well. So let's get this back home, away from this noisy traffic, and see what we can do with some processing. So here we are back at home. Let's have a look at editing the chosen image. Now there were a couple of images I could have chosen. There was the tight one, which I talked about in the first place, but what I actually plumped for is this one here. Looking at it here, it looks so dark, doesn't it? All the details there, I'm only ever so slightly, if you just click on here, you can see I'm only clipping the blacks in one very small area. And that actually, interestingly enough, we'll talk about in a bit, was a horrible, horrible spot on my sensor. And as you can see, looking in the sky, Christ, there was an awful lot of sensor dust on my sensor at that point in time. But fortunately, we're going to crop out the sky, so it's not going to be a big deal. Now, it was cold that day, by the way, really cold, I have to say, mid-December. But we had some lovely light. So let's have a look at what I did. So as always, we'll go through this and we'll just show you some snapshots of various stages in the edit. So first off, let's have a look at the basic edits that I carried out. So here are the basic edits, as you can see on the right hand side. I don't think I've carried out anything other than just those sliders that you can see there. Obviously I've had to bring the exposure up a little bit, drop the contrast. Anyway, you can see it all there. At this point, looking at it, I've probably gone too far with the texture. It's quite a sort of sharp, detailed image, and I'll probably want to soften that down a little bit. But as I was saying before, this horrible sensor spot, I'm not even sure it was a spot. I just think it was something on the lens, if I remember rightly. It just got on the inside of the back end of the lens. Oh, horrible. But we'll get rid of that in a bit. But yeah, as you can see, we've got some nice detail. It's these skeletal branches that I really think are the focal point of this image on the right hand side. So what we'll do is I'll show you the next step, how I try to enhance those and really make those the point that your eye is led to. So to do that, I just basically got a radial filter and lightened up the birches, as you can see here. Now there's quite a stark difference between the original or the photo or the snapshot before and this one. So what I'll do is I'll show you a quick before and after. So this here is the image with the basic edits again, and then this is where I've lightened the birches, and as you can see there's quite a significant change. They've really been pulled up. So let's just have a little look at that. So we've got a radial filter on here, as I mentioned. So what I've done there, as you can see, is I've just pulled over right over the birches, and I've pulled up the contrast and the highlights and the whites and left everything else alone. But just doing that has really brought those sort of that white, that light out in those birch trunks and the branches actually. And now you're kind of drawn over, hopefully your eye is kind of drawn over to that, because that's really where I want you to start when you look at this image. And then the next stage was just to adjust some of the hues, just to bring out some of the colours, make them slightly less rusty, because I felt that everything was a very orangey, rusty colour. So if we go down, you can have a look here. So if we just slide down to the hues and saturation levels, you can see here what I've done is I've pulled the orange and the yellow and the green away from that sort of reddy orangey area, only a little bit, but just pulled it in more towards the green side of that. So it's not quite so yellow and rusty, as I said. And then I've also added some saturation. So I've saturated the greens a bit to emphasize those a little bit more, saturated the yellows a bit, and dropped the aqua and the blue for the sky, as I like to do. I don't like it to be too obvious in there. So again, what we'll do here is I'll just do a quick before and after so you can see what I'm talking about. So this is before, and as you can see, it's not too bad, but it's a little bit on the sort of orangey yellow end of the spectrum. And then this is after, and as you can see, I've just pulled a bit more green into the image, and I've also added a vignette as well, so it just pulls you in a little bit more to a centre and onto his birches even more so. And then the final part of this stage in Lightroom, before I take it into Photoshop and do a couple of edits, was just to soften it down a little bit. So what I've done is I've just pulled back on the texture, and I've actually pushed the clarity up a little bit, but that texture was too high, and it was giving a too everything felt sort of hyper real, very, very sharp. So pulling that back, you can see it's just dropped that down a little bit. And the other thing is I've just pushed the contrast up a little bit as well. So we're getting a little bit more definition between the blacks and the lights. And hopefully you can see that's added a little bit more of a kind of a painterly feel, if you want, to the image. So now here we are in Photoshop, and as you can see, we've got that horrible sort of area there where we've got that thing on the lens which we need to get rid of. And what I did with this is I just used a bit of generative fill, and if I just turn the layer on, you can see that's done a fantastic job of just removing that. So that's gone now. Let's just turn it off again. And then also we've got quite a few bright spots, as you can see, sort of in this top corner here. You've got the sky knocking about quite a bit, and then over here as well. So if I turn the layer back on, you can see that's kind of removed those there on that area there, and then also in this top corner. So I'll turn it off again and then on again, and you can just see that I've just removed any kind of distracting elements from the sky. So we've got overall now a kind of a less distracting image. Well, there's less in the image that's going to pull your eye from where I actually want you to focus. And then finally, we just took it back into Lightroom and did a very minor couple of finishing adjustments. Basically, all I did here was I just cropped a little bit more off the bottom and just painted a little brush along the bottom as well, and dropped the highlights so those grasses weren't quite so obvious at the bottom. And essentially that leaves us with our final image. So I very much hope that you enjoyed that episode. I hope that you enjoyed the image, and I hope that you also enjoyed the process of me going out and taking it and bringing it back and editing it and showing you through the steps. It was a very cold day, but I think actually the final image is quite nice. And it was a very, very everyday landscape, this one. I was right on the side of a road, you know, not normally where you would probably think to go and take shots. Now, what I might do for next week is I might again put up another photo that I'm going to edit next week and give you the opportunity to edit the same one and then send it in to me, and we'll do some comparisons. So what I'll do is I'll put that photo up and put a link in the description. I'll also probably put a link on my Facebook page, and also maybe on the community tab here in YouTube. And I'd love to see your versions of it. I'd love to see your edits. So please, you know, give it a good go. I think what we'll do is we will put a deadline on it of Tuesday of next week, which is going to be sometime in April. I'm not quite sure when, but I'll pop that down here so you can see exactly when, and then we'll share those, or I'll share those at the end, and we'll see how we all did and how mine differs from yours. Anyway, thanks very much for watching again. I really appreciate it. I hope you've enjoyed this one, and I will see you next time.